For 40 years, biotechnology operated on a simple bargain: discover something brilliant, prove it works, and get swallowed whole by a massive pharmaceutical company. The arrangement was clear. A small biotech company acted as the laboratory, providing the scientific spark. Big Pharma acted as the factory, the regulator-facing machine, and the global distributor. This wasn't by choice. It was forced by structural limits. A young firm rarely had the regulatory apparatus for trials, the manufacturing scale for production, or the access to reach patients. To survive the final mile, they had to surrender the asset. But three converging forces are now testing the limits of that model: artificial intelligence, late-stage growth capital, and direct-to-patient commercial channels. These shifts are beginning to separate the molecule from the pharmaceutical machine that used to deliver it. This is a structural change in how drugs are discovered, financed, developed, and delivered. Biotechnology firms are increasingly able to bypass early acquisitions. This allows the strongest firms to capture more of the economic value of their science by building their own integrated delivery systems. There is a persistent myth coming from the software sector that human biology behaves like computable code, and that generative AI can simply print perfect drug candidates. The reality is far, far more stubborn. A human body is not a server, and disease pathways are not clean software architectures. Biology is filled with overlapping redundancy, aggressive immune responses, and extreme metabolic variation across patients. AI does not eliminate that biological risk. Instead, it changes the temporal distribution of that risk. This diagram compares risk profiles over a drug's lifecycle. The traditional brute force method backloads risk into expensive trials. The AI-assisted curve spikes early, front-loading failure. By forcing weak programs to fail earlier, the model directly preserves capital, avoiding dead-end chemistry. When operating under conditions of extreme biological uncertainty, identifying a failure in the lab is a victory. It prevents a billion-dollar failure in a phase 3 clinical trial. This distinction separates the weak AI biotech models from the strong ones. The weak model is just a conventional discovery pipeline that bolts on a machine learning department. In this industry, computation without biology is theater. The strong model operates as a closed experimental loop. Algorithms screen massive molecular libraries at the computational node. These predictions then require strict empirical validation at the wet lab. Crucially, physical outcomes feed directly back into the computational model, refining the next predictive cycle. This iterative cycle accelerates both target identification and ADME optimization, mapping how a drug is absorbed, distributed, metabolized, and excreted. Competitive advantage in life sciences no longer rests on possessing a single promising molecule. It belongs to the firm operating the fastest, most proprietary integrated discovery loop. Even with a faster discovery loop, a molecule still has to survive the financial realities of clinical development. Historically, mid-stage biotechs hit a financial wall at phase 2. Facing expensive late-stage trials, companies were forced to sell to Big Pharma, partner away their rights, or brave a volatile IPO market. This timeline illustrates the capital shift. The historical funding gap at phase 2B is now filled by alternative late-stage capital, like growth equity. This extends the private runway to fund phase 3 trials, shifting acquisition leverage so management negotiates from a position of strength. Because independence is now a viable, capitalized strategic threat, a buyer facing a biotech with alternative commercial pathways must pay a massive premium. But even with capital, Big Pharma always held one final advantage: commercial distribution. They controlled the physician relationships, the medical affairs teams, and the complex payer formulary access. Today, specific digital and logistical tools are bypassing that infrastructure. Telehealth platforms, digital prescribing, and specialty pharmacy home delivery are creating a direct route to the end user. Look at the structural change on this map. The dense web of legacy distribution channels is bypassed by a bold line cutting straight to the patient via telehealth. The GLP-1 market proved these channels could successfully prescribe and deliver chronic therapies at scale. This direct route does not apply to every medical condition, but for specific categories like obesity, diabetes, and certain dermatological disorders, a global sales force is no longer a strict requirement. Delivering the drug is only the first step. Direct distribution allows the biotech to capture longitudinal adherence patterns and real-world evidence straight from the user.
By cutting out the intermediaries, an independent biotech transforms from a simple drug manufacturer into a continuous learning system, capturing both exclusive clinical data and direct brand trust. For investors and operators, this structural decoupling creates a lucrative yet highly complex environment.
The challenge is navigating the real scientific shifts without falling for AI technology hype. This matrix categorizes the modern biotechnology landscape into 3 distinct profiles: pre-revenue platforms, AI-native discovery systems, and late-stage inflection companies. We can immediately dismiss the pre-revenue platforms. These companies offer broad software promises, but lack the rigorous wet lab proof to back them up. Without clinical outcomes, an algorithmic model is an expensive toy. AI-native discovery companies carry heavy potential, but only if they exhibit true clinical discipline. The firm must operate a proprietary, closed experimental loop that actually moves real programs into the clinic. The highest risk-adjusted value targets sit in the late-stage inflection category. These are firms possessing both Phase 2b or Phase 3 clinical evidence, combined with strategic commercial scarcity. Firmly, presentations and digital demos do not validate biotechnology. The only metric that proves a platform works is in-human clinical data. Surviving this environment also requires rigorous commercial realism. Leadership teams must look at their capital, look at their data, and know exactly when to partner, when to sell, and when to scale directly. The defining feature of the next decade's dominant life sciences firm is not the lucky discovery of a singular molecule. It is the architecture of an integrated system that controls its own proprietary data, commands its own capital, and dictates its own path to market.